Hi, everyone. Welcome to Best Life by You, the podcast dedicated to helping you overcome challenges in nutrition, mindset, fitness, and relationships while prioritizing holistic health and wellness. I'm your host, Julia, and today we have a very special guest with us, Joe Gagnon. Joe is driven by a simple mission, helping people realize they are capable of far more than what they believe is possible. Over the years, he has led six companies as CEO, coached top performers, and pushed himself to physical and mental extremes, completing six Ironman races, running 100-mile ultramarathons, finishing six marathons on six continents in 6 days, and completing the legendary Badwater 135 ultramarathon through Death Valley. As CEO of Rainmaker, he leads the development of an AI-powered sales platform designed to help small businesses grow smarter and faster. As a high-performance coach, he partners with bold, ambitious leaders to break through their self-imposed limits and lead lives filled with purpose and greater impact. Joe's life and his second book, Living Intentionally, are rooted in the belief that growth happens at the edge. It's in the uncomfortable, uncertain, and transformational movements that we find out who we truly are. The principles of grit, grace, and groundedness guide every step he takes. Whether he's building a company, mentoring a founder, or speaking on stage, his goal remains the same: to inspire others to live intentionally by design, not by chance. Also, as of this morning, Joe hit _1 bestseller in extreme sports on Amazon. And this week, Joe is featured on the cover of the Westchester Local Newspaper from his Badwater 135 race, which is the toughest foot race in the world. What an introduction. What a man. I am so honored to be able to interview. So I am just really excited, Joe, to have you here and excited to talk to you. So welcome.
Thanks, Julia. I'm sure sometimes listening to that, I'm like, who did all that? And then I was
You
like,
did.
that's me. Yeah. You know, I don't know. Sometimes I feel so obligated to say that if you look at the end of the story, it seems unrelatable, but the beginning of the story was quite humble. There wasn't much going on in my life in high school or college or even my first few jobs in my life. I wasn't a college athlete. I didn't start running until I was 39 years old. I hadn't found my pathway to writing. And so, for anyone listening, this intentionality is a concept that I finally sort of caught up to because I was living that way and realized that it was about the choices, it was about having purpose, and it was about guiding myself, through what tends to take us off track, whether it's discomfort or, sort of trying to fit to what society wants or, just actually not leaning into the possibilities. And so, it's very exciting to be on this side of the story
Yeah.
because, yeah, I proved to myself that maybe indeed my premise that everyone, can do more than they think they can is actually true.
Yeah. And I mean, today is more of a conversation of just hearing your story because already, I mean, just that introduction is so inspirational, but to hear it from you live of what you went through, because somebody reading that or hearing, your introduction might just be like, wow, he's just lucky. He's just one of those few that, had that great opportunity. And we both know that's not how it is. You have
Right.
to put in the work. So just to give you more of a spotlight, right? And I gave your introduction and everything, but if you wouldn't mind just sharing more of your story of why you're doing what you do, what you currently do, how you landed where you are today, just diving into that because again, that introduction is just so inspiring. So how do you go about explaining what you do and your experience to others so they can understand and be inspired as well?
Yeah, I think that, part of like every one of our journey is sort of like there are moments when it could be the beginning or the end, that we can be survivors or thrivers. And that little by little, as we lean into sort of everything's the beginning and everything's about thriving, our entire system sort of, conspires in our favor. Like the feedback loop is actually very positive. But you do have to sort of step back a little bit because we can live in this sort of survival mode, love the book The Comfort Crisis because
Yeah.
we can just sit on the couch and watch Netflix. And there's no judgment about that, but it doesn't actually develop much deeper into the possibilities. So, I grew up in the Bronx, just outside New York City.
Yeah.
Humble beginning. My dad was a social worker. My mother worked at the Child Protective Agency. We had great family life and Sunday dinners and all that. But, no one was a top performer. I went to school in the Bronx, high school and college. I started working in New York City. First job, $7 an hour as a professional. Didn't feel very inspiring. I always tell people like that first week of work was pretty pathetic because my car was stolen and my girlfriend broke up with
Oh,
me. And I had to move back in the basement of my parents' house because I was broke. I mean, I was in debt from college. They had no money. They were like, and so, but like, okay, you just gotta sort of grin and bear it. I used to take the subway because it was cheaper than the railroad. I don't know what it was back then. And you ate, two hot dogs. Of course, I'm now plant-based, and
yeah.
and a Coke because that's all you could afford. So that's what I had to start. And that went on for quite a bit of time. And what I thought I was supposed to do, Julia, was to become a really good white collar worker.
Yeah.
I met this fabulous girl. We get married. I'm not making that much money, but, you know, we have a couple of kids and we're like, we should start save for college. And so I start working harder and harder and, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Started working for me. I became a partner in a big firm. I was making a whole bunch of money and everything seemed on the outside to be perfect. The BMW and the big house, the country club
Yeah.
and the lifestyle. And, somewhere around in my late 30s, I said, it's clear now. It wasn't so clear then. Like, is this like the end of the story? Did I find the story before, I had spent enough time on this universe? And I was like, oh man, I don't like the feeling. I couldn't do a push-up. I couldn't run a mile. I didn't know how to do anything. Couldn't even laugh. I had sort of lost my sense of humor. I was taking life so seriously. I was living the life that everyone wanted for me. And so, I had this bit of a breakthrough, and I said to myself, you have to do something. So try seeing if you can exercise a couple of days a week. And that was a stretch. There was the same excuse as everyone has, like, well, I don't have any time in the day. So I decided, well, what if I got up earlier? Instead of 7, I got up at 6:30 or I got up at 6. And that became sort of some time I had available and started doing some activities. And then, it wasn't quick. Like this, in the first couple of years, I was just a hack doing 2 or 3 days a week. But then maybe I got invited to run a 5K with people at work and I could do that. And I was like, oh, this is sort of interesting. And then, and then it just starts to compound. And one of the most brilliant things I did, I'm not brilliant, but I did was I created a spreadsheet and I wrote down what I was doing every
I
day.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I've kept track of it for 25 years. And it became my accountability partner. I liked writing it down. I liked adding it up. I imagine now that it was a dopamine kind of thing that was keeping me on track. That I didn't know anything about dopamine. Of course, I don't even any of us really do. We just talk about it.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, that first 10 years, I was relatively anonymous about what I was doing. And because I was just trying to sort of rebuild myself, to be honest. And so in the beginning, it was the exercise. Then it became the writing because I wanted to reflect on it. I started blogging. About 8 years into it, I started this daily blog that I was publishing, mostly for myself. Then some people liked reading it. And then year after year, so I went from working out 3 days a week to 4 days to 5 days to 6 days to doing doubles to having this crazy idea. By the time I turned 49, I could do an Ironman. I gave myself 5 years. I just found, Julia, the thing that was amazing was how adaptable our system is. Now,
Yes.
two other big shifts that I made, and this is what worked for me, was I gave up drinking alcohol and I stopped eating meat. Now, what happened was that those I didn't know, but there was a lot of inflammation from both of those that was fighting my performance. So my why at the time was I wanted to go faster. And if I didn't have a beer, I didn't eat meat, I was so much better. I felt like, oh wow, I feel really good. And so I could go harder and I wasn't sleeping a lot because I was at this top end of performance
Yeah.
and I was recovering. And so inflammation does matter. I know you went through with your situation, that anytime you get this inflamed system, we're operating at maybe 90, 80, 70, 60% of your possibilities. So you got to clean that up somehow, right? Which ultimately becomes the pillars I write about in the book. I didn't know about them. I was feeling my way through this. And little by little, then you meet some people, they tell you this little bit of improvement, you try that. Look, at the end of the day, if you do something 365 days a year for 10 straight years, you're going to get pretty good at it. Now, I'm a
Yep.
patient person and it worked. And I became really good at all of these activities, the Ironman, the cycling, the running, but then the writing. And, I'll stop there. But foundationally, it was, like I wrote about in the book, the courage to make a commitment to consistency. This deep level sort of, it wasn't just about accountability, it was about courage. It was about saying to myself that when I make a commitment, I'm not going to give up on that. And that I didn't get bored with consistency. I learned that's where mastery happens. And that I don't think that that's a judgment as to whether you have to do that or not. The key when I say people can do more than you think they can is just that that's there if you want it. If you want more, don't buy a lottery ticket. Bet on yourself. Turns out pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, just that alone of hearing your experience and your story, thank you for sharing that because a lot of people tend to assume things of how you grew up, what you did, and just like that background information, it makes you even so much more relatable of even in today's society of what people are struggling with and that you could be any age to go
Yeah.
for your dreams. Like that's the thing. A lot of people, I'll be 30 in a couple weeks and I know I'm young and I know there's a lot of people that are like you could change your career 5 more times. And for me, it's funny because I've already changed my career like 4 times, and I feel like I'm truly living my calling
Yeah.
now, doing my business, being plant-based, and that was one of the best decisions I made. And just going and hearing your story, right? Hearing everything you're doing, how do you define being healthy with a
Mhm.
huge plate of that? Like, is it somebody that is working around the clock? Is there rest time in there? Is it just when you're doing something you're passionate about, time doesn't really matter, rest doesn't matter? What does healthy look like to you? How do you define that? I would just love to
Yeah.
dive more into that.
That's such a good question.
I know, right?
I'm gonna,
Like,
I'm gonna,
how do you define that in one sentence?
I'm gonna start with like probably usually the most off-putting thing I ever tell people, but it's actually very sincere. I don't believe in balance at all. I think balance is an excuse for mediocrity and an excuse for surviving. And the human race is not meant to survive, we're made to thrive.
Yep.
So look at 168 hours in a week. You got to think about how you use it. So the beginning of the architecture is how do you spend that time? Sleep really matters. What you eat really matters. Exercise matters. Mindset and community. Those are my 5 pillars. I focus on that. If you're executing on those with integrity, meaning that you are actually trying to achieve an objective and you know what you're doing and it's conscious,
Yep.
you're starting on the path of health. This is the personal health platform. The second, I was listening to this podcast this morning actually on my run, and they were talking about this entirety of this, our immune system, and it's about aging, and that the inflammation helps us, well, doesn't help us, makes us age faster. And I'm like, I haven't really been sick in my memory, so that means it's at least 10 or 15 years. I never got COVID, which I found somewhat miraculous, but needless to say, I have built, I think, so my definition of healthy is a strong immune system, a well-balanced person who is functional, right? Who does not create drama in their lives or anyone else's lives, who actually understands the responsibility to have and carries a set of, morals and values and cares about community. It's about taking care of our body and respecting it deeply. Like, look in the mirror. It's not about whether you have muscles or not, but look at that person and do you respect that person for what they do and what you commit to? And then lastly, it's about how I give back because to me, that's a responsibility that I have. And I think all of that is the definition of health, right? Because health isn't just the fact that I've not been sick. I feel like I actually heal miraculously. Like in February when I got into this Badwater race, I was running, my foot was bothering me for 2 weeks. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be bad if my foot still hurts. And I'm like, you know what? My foot's going to get better. It's just going to get better. And in the next week, it got better. And so I don't know what that means other than I think I'm a healing system because I actually am very conscious about everything. It's why living intentionally matters. There is nothing sort of random, even if I decided to eat a vegan ice cream, like that is on purpose. Like it's okay. We're not here, like there's no model of perfection. You know, 21 meals in the week, eat 17 well, and you're going to live well.
Yeah.
Sleep 6 hours a night. Maybe you don't get eight, you're going to do fine. Move your body every day. Like it's so foundational. But then this is the part. Like I was asked recently, I was doing a coaching session, and the senior executive said to me, "Why do you live the way you do?" And I said, Julia, I said, if you could feel this good, I don't know why you
Yes.
wouldn't.
Yep.
Right. And so that's sort of the answer. Like all the extreme that I do.
Hmm.
I just finished this crazy race, 120 degrees through Death Valley, et cetera, et cetera. I finished on the finish line and I was just smiling and happy and it well adjusted. I did not fall over it. I didn't like take 2 weeks to recover. I was back running in 2 days. I've built a system that has a high level of resiliency, that has vitality in it. Right? This is what builds though. Like the magic isn't me. The magic is I'm using this system to its maximum potential. So, like 30 years old, that's amazing. I probably feel like I'm 40. But what is incredible is if you thought about the next 25 years and you said,
Hmm.
here's the pathway I'm going to be on, you're already on a great one, by the way. Like,
Thank you.
what would happen if you did that? Like, it would be so remarkable that you wouldn't even be able to comprehend it until it happens.
Yeah. And
And
it's,
so,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that's it. So that's sort of my answer, a rather sort of circuitous answer to what is health.
Yeah, and it's funny because I have people, I'll work 15-hour days,
Mm,
and yes, I'm exhausted, but it's a good exhaustion. Like
mm,
where I am now, I feel like I'm fueling my body well. I'm out of the mold, like living in black mold situation. Listeners don't know about that yet, but
yeah.
eventually they will. But that I realized because I was so sick all the time. And I'm like, how am I so sick? I don't drink alcohol. And if I do, it's like 3 times a year, maybe that. And then I am working out. I'm 100% plant-based. I'm not eating all this processed food or ultra processed food. Like
Mm,
I'm drinking so much water. I wasn't understanding what
mm.
I was doing. And then I was like, it's my environment. The minute I'm gone, thank God, I have not been sick
It's great.
since I've gotten out there. And I'm like, this is how it should be. Like I feel so energized. Like even coughing, I'll hear a lot of people dealt with allergies, no allergies. Like, yes, I'm allergic to certain things, but
Mm,
I have not, people around me would have watery eyes, allergies, coughing, none of that. And it's like that for me is I have so much energy. I feel great. I feel like I can, and I'm doing my passion. So then that's another thing too. It's like I'm doing what I love. So I have the energy to commit to this and to do the things I want to be doing. I'm not tied to something. And yes, I can understand that's a privileged statement, but I also have worked my ass off to get where
yeah.
I am, just like you. You worked your ass off to get where you are. And so that's the other thing. I'm just like, you are making choices, and the choices you make, some people look at them as you're sacrificing going out, you're sacrificing this. It's like it's not a sacrifice if I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Like I don't want to be out till 10 p.m. at night. Like that's not something I want to do. So
Depends on what that outcome would get connected with, so
yes.
I'm not sure. Like, I think that actually we should ask the question, what are
Yeah.
we getting from it? So if it's social connection,
Yeah.
that's fine, but
Different.
I don't think that's really what is happening. You
Yeah.
know, I think that, what you experienced is sometimes the breakthrough, because
Yeah.
when we feel good, we don't notice, but when we don't, we do notice.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I tell people, I'm on vacation every day because it's a mindset.
Yeah.
Wake up, do some writing, I go for a run, I eat my protein shake, I do work,
Yeah.
then, maybe I'll go out and exercise again, write my blog, hang out with some smart people. Like it's like that's a vacation day, you don't,
Yeah.
it's in our mind, in our heart. And when we make excuses or we're running away, we should ask our question as to why we're doing that,
Hmm.
rather than, you don't need permission to live the life you want, to have a podcast, to do anything. This is up to you living
Hmm.
the life you want. And it really turns in our favor.
Yeah.
And if there are people in your lives that are getting in the way, telling you not to do that, live another way, influence us in a way we don't want, we should question whether we should be with them, because why would we take their opinion over our opinion?
Yeah.
Because it's our life. Like they could do what they want, but I want to live my life. And so, yeah, there's some times where I was like, yeah, I appreciate what you want to do. You guys can, I used to say, like, they'd say, oh, let's go to the bar tonight. I'm like, you want to go for a run? They're like, oh, no. I'm like, okay, well, you go to the bar. I'll go for a run. Thank
Yeah.
you. Like, I don't think we have to
Yeah.
follow others. We should follow our heart and then what we want to achieve. And
Yeah.
then the magic starts to happen.
Yeah, and the people in our lives, they've helped. There are some that have helped get us to a certain spot,
Sure.
and they're there for a season. They're there for a reason. Like, not everybody is meant to be on our journey just like us. We're not meant to be along everybody's journey for life. It's to either teach us something, guide us somewhere, and the choices we make. I'm very much like you, and I'm grateful that a lot of my girlfriends do enjoy working out and I only have one friend who's on the 100% plant-based journey, but I do have some friends who don't mind to have plant-based foods and whatnot, but they do see and they ask. I even have certain clients who are not 100% plant-based, and I'm trying to teach them to incorporate more plant-based
Mhm.
foods and fiber. And they're just like, how do you have energy all the time? I'm like, being plant-based, like it's true. It's like my choices help
Yes.
get me to where I am. So, that's yeah, it's amazing. So, you had mentioned values earlier, and this is something we just talked through. The non-existent like balance, talking about that, not really existent. You create your own life. And I want to just go more, I want to revisit the values. So, what are your top values and how do you go about honoring those values? So, go ahead and dive into that because I'd love to hear about what those values are for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not something that's so simple, but you learn over time. Like that lead with the first
Hmm.
word is respect. I think that we're all put on this planet with equal opportunity. I think that it doesn't matter what you are, who you are, we're all equal. And so I start with respect all the time. And, I think sometimes as a white male, that's a bit problematic because we're perceived as, sort of this controlling force. I want to be a partner with, a peer to, a supporter of, a servant of the world. That's my first and foremost. And so I lead with that. The second, and it sort of connects, it's like not just respect for the world, respect for myself.
Hmm.
And so that means that my priority is me first, family second, work third. And that always sounds selfish. But if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anything else.
Yep.
You have to build a strong platform there. You know, a second part is I believe in nurturing. It's a strong value. I think that we're all here to help and support and develop each other. I've had it happen in my life. I think we can do that at every moment. And in that, we create independence in each other. Like, we
Hmm.
don't want to create a dependent world. We want to create independence because we're better as humans when we do that. I love to be bold. It's sort of fun to just say, I wonder if, which connects to my curiosity. I'm deeply curious. I have this desperate need to know. Like when I did the 6 marathon, 6 continent challenge, excuse me, a lot of people ask me, like, what if this happens? And what about that? And I'm like, why can't I just go find out? I just want to know. I want to know how hard it's going to be. I want to know how ridiculous this is. I
Yeah.
just want to know. And they're like, oh, well, I don't care about like, okay, so when I did that, actually, it turns out I wanted to find out how bad you could feel, and I found out it wasn't as bad as I thought. This past winter, I did a 12-hour pull-up challenge. I did 2,000 pull-ups in 11 hours and 40 minutes, and
See.
I just was like, I wonder what it'll feel like. How many can I do? What will go wrong first? I want to see how bad it would hurt. And like, I am desperately curious to know. Like, this
Yeah.
to me is a privilege of life. When I tell people, like, the first breakthrough you should do is the next day that it rains, go out and walk in the rain with no umbrella and get soaking wet. Don't bring your phone, probably, or put it in a plastic baggie and just feel it. What does it feel like? Like, wake up your senses, wake up your body. So this curiosity is just like this incessant, like pounding in my head, like I want to learn, I want to know. And then the last thing, for me really is around this sort of idea of commitment to myself and to the world. And when I make a commitment, I'm very sort of sincere about that, which means there's integrity in it. I've already acknowledged what the sort of the implications are, and then it makes it easy for me to deliver on it. So what I want the world to know is if I say I'm going to do something, you can count on that 100%. I want you to know that. We need to have that feeling in this world. Like, we have so many people we know, we're not sure. Like, mine is
Yep.
like, okay, you asked me to come on your podcast. You should be 100% certain I am going to do that
Yeah.
in any other way. So that's sort of like my take on values. I would just say that the only other thing that I think is really important is this social contract we have to creating a better world for each other, which comes back from the respect word. But we've become all too selfish. We're trying to consolidate wealth. We live in a world of abundance. We should be thinking about how we share more equally and equitably and how we build the same opportunity and support others on their pathway. I'm working with a buddy of mine in South Africa, KK Diaz, and we're working on a program called 10,000 Champions to
Oh,
actually build 10,000 entrepreneurs across South Africa,
wow.
And so that's what we should be doing. And, to the degree that we all can do that, there are
Mhm.
so many opportunities, then it gets a little less antagonistic, and maybe we don't have to watch the news and get all wound up about the negativity when there's so much
Yeah.
positivity out there.
Yeah. During COVID, my friend and I had an idea. We were like, let's just call our news only good news. It was like OG news. And we were like, let's do a podcast of that. We didn't do the podcast, but it was just the idea of like,
Mhm.
let's just focus on the only good things right now. We know the world is tough. Every single day, I'm always like, there's battles, there's blessings, there's challenges, there's good things. You're going to face that every single day. It's always how you react to it. You know that that's something I know you preach, and that's, you stay true to that. And just, I mean, thinking about that, I'm curious, is there a time that you had where something you went through in your life, think of one experience that was super challenging, how you decided to go about it, how you responded, and what you learned from it? I know it's a loaded question, but just to more so for the listeners to hear about what those challenges look like, or a challenge you went through and how you overcame that. Because some people will say, like, I broke down and cried and I slept through it because I didn't know how to respond yet, or I called my friend, and or there's different avenues of how people respond to situations. So not sure if you need a minute to think
Oh, I
about
have a
that, but
lot of them.
you have a lot. Oh,
Uh,
I
but
figure just hearing like your story, I'm like, there has to be one, but I just want to hear how overcome challenges.
See, I think that it starts with this idea that I have this like 1 minute, 1 hour, 24-hour mindset, meaning for something it doesn't matter, you can let it bother you for 1 minute. If it's sort of significant, 1 hour, the most significant 24 hours after that, you have to sort of like move on. So
Mhm.
it doesn't really matter what the situation is. But, you know, um, I've been a CEO of small startups for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes where, it might not work out exactly as you like. And, investors decide they want to go in a different direction. And they have a meeting with you and say, we're going in a different direction and we no longer need you. So you're like ushered out the door. You're actually running the company, and the next thing you know, you're out of a job. And so it is the risk that you take on. You understand
Yeah.
that fully. It's like you think that CEO is always in control of everything, but maybe not. So
Mhm.
It happened one time, and after 5 years of working with a bunch of people, I was really surprised. And so, for 24 hours, I was sort of pretty darn frustrated because I was like, boy, I didn't even have a heads up. I didn't have any idea this was going to happen. And then I realized that, it wasn't about me at all. It was about them. It was about their perspective. I didn't have to agree with it, but they get to make their decision. That's fine. And I then started just getting back into the networking chain, started, you know, dialing and emailing the people that I knew. Within 30 days, I had a whole bunch of meetings. Another 15 days later, I had a job offer and I was back in the game again.
Yeah.
And, had I carried too much negativity out of it, I think it would have affected me looking for a new opportunity. Um, I didn't, I certainly, of course, did my own reflection and said whether or not it was anything that I had to do with, but sometimes it doesn't. And I don't think we should take that circumstance and make it tragic in our lives. And so that's back to this beginning and end thing. It wasn't going to be the end for me. Yeah, for 24 hours, I was sort of probably a bit fussy.
Yeah.
But then I just like, I go to bed and I say, I'm waking up with a clear head and
Yeah.
it works. Oh, maybe there's a little bit of lingering issue, but not really anything substantive because then it's like, this is like, why am I doing this to myself? I shouldn't. And, there was like the Stoics said, worry about what you can control, not what you can't control. And I
Hmm.
worked on that throughout my life. And while it's a very simple statement that maybe people can say, I think you got to practice how you do that. And, sometimes it's worth just chuckling and saying, okay, this is part of what happens. It's okay.
Yeah, and it's also, I do believe if it's meant for you, it will be for you. And that's something I think of even um for jobs you learn. But when I was a teacher, which I had resigned August 8th, almost a year ago, officially full time, from that to do my business. And I remember there was a period I was just applying for over 120 jobs for teaching. I could not get an interview. And then finally I went on 13 interviews, made it to the last round of a few of them, never got the job. And I was like, are you serious? How did I not? And then everyone's like, you're going to get a teaching job. You're great. You're going to get it. I'm like, there was something greater that was pulling me to be like, it's not, this isn't your place. Like, this is not for you. And eventually, I did get a full-time probationary position in a middle school. I did it. And within like a few weeks into the position, my heart was just being called in a different direction. It was
Hmm.
like, okay, you got the job. Now what? And for me, it's like I'm such an achiever where I work 7 days a week. I enjoy what I do. And I'm like, and I have friends who are like, you need a rest. You work way, way, way too much. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like I enjoy what I do. Like I'm doing the things I want to do. Um, but I look back at that experience, I'm like, that wasn't for me. Like it was an experience that I was meant to have. And then when I got that position, I ended up meeting somebody. She helped me just like focus. It was all mindset, and she would just put words into me of saying like, Julia, I could see you going so far. Like you have such a passion for nutrition, why don't you take that leap? And even
Hmm.
the principal, when I met with him, he was very supportive. He was like, I told him of my opportunities I had, and he's like, you could always go back to teaching, like take this opportunity that you have, the passion you have, and run with it. And so I hear you in that where I was very frustrated during that time. I'm like, why am I not getting any jobs? I make it to the last round of these interviews and I felt so unwanted. I was like, nobody is wanting me. Nobody's hiring me. Things are not working out. I was even in a position where I was teaching, I was a leave replacement, and a person outside got the job that I was in filling the replacement for. And I had to show her how to pretty much run the classes. So it was weird. I mean, I did it, without question, but I was like, isn't this so interesting that I'm teaching the teacher that got hired for the position I'm in, and I didn't get that position. So it was like, in hindsight, I'm like, it wasn't meant for me. And I didn't sit all sour. I wasn't showing that I was upset. I was just like, okay, you know what? This wasn't this wasn't for me. So, um, I hear you in that sense, and it's could be frustrating, like going through times like that. And
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that yes, for sure. And it's not meant to say that, we should live in a bubble and not pay
yeah,
attention. But I think what's important is to think about what feedback loop is happening. And you knew that that feedback loop was not actually accurate. And so it shouldn't have an effect on you. These are
yeah.
other people making decisions for their own benefit.
Hmm.
So I don't worry about what other people decide.
Hmm.
I try and make my own path. I often invite myself places. Sometimes people say no, but I invite myself enough places that I end up where I want to go. And
Yeah.
I always turn it around to like, you could feel like I did in high school and college, like I was never invited to any parties and I always felt like a victim. And I'm like, oh, well, if I want to go to a party, why don't I just have one? And I can invite people. Instead of waiting for the invitation, let's
Yeah.
go create it, which is what you did with your business, which I think is what everyone can do.
Yeah.
And rather than trying to hand control over to the rest of the world, we can take it back ourselves.
Yep. That's a very, very well put. So I mean, this goes into just another question that I have because I mean, you've been dropping so much advice and wisdom and everything. So before I ask you, because I do want to finish up with hearing about your advice, but is there any advice along the way of what you've gone through that somebody offered you and it just stuck with you? Somebody shared with you and you were just like, wow, that was inspirational and I stayed with it. Or was it something that came to you and you've just been offering it to others?
That first one, which I said, and I'll repeat it again, which was prioritize yourself first, family
Hmm.
second, work third. I thought that was really counterintuitive. I was like, oh, how in heaven's name do you do that? And it turns out that was pretty amazing advice. I think the second piece of advice was from my dad, who said, when I thought I was taking a job I wasn't so sure about, he's like, just go through an evaluation of what's the worst that could happen. If you can live through that, then you should do it. And most of the time, it never comes true. Like, you just, once you sort of acknowledge what could happen, then it doesn't matter. It's no longer fear-based.
Hmm.
And so, there's always a way out back to the beginning and the end, you
Yeah.
know. And then a third was that I'll probably just give this advice to myself all the
Yeah.
time, which is, I'm here to live the life of my choosing, not the life of anyone else's choosing. And that doesn't mean I don't take advice. I'm just not going to just take their input and make it mine until I consider it. And I think that's really important. I think, oh my gosh, not only that, we also will say worse things to ourselves than we would say to anyone else, which I don't
Oh,
understand.
I
Like
don't know.
that's terrible. But like I think we just have to, play the mirror test often. That's why like the 168 hours in the week is a great equalizer to start. Create a spreadsheet, piece of paper, write the days of the week, write the hours down, and for 1 week just track what you did. And then sit with yourself at the end of that week and say, how do I feel about how I spent my time?
Yeah.
And if you're honest with yourself, you rarely come back with, wow, that was amazing. It's like, oh, could probably shift this. And then it becomes an enabler, right? And
Yeah.
so these are ways to break through. And so then when someone tells you something that you didn't agree with, you can say, well, first, I'm not sure I agree, but secondly, it doesn't fit into the way that I have my time scheduled. So my priorities are going to win out because it aligns with my purpose, aligns with my objectives, etc. So I think it comes back to this sort of like this intentional living becomes the
Mhm.
power. It's not just habits, it's the
Yeah.
why, it's the
Yeah.
pillars, the platform, the reflection, the acceptance of discomfort, which, by the way, discomfort is a pathway to growth. There's nothing wrong with discomfort. It's
Hmm.
a bit of noise around the signal. I love discomfort. I think it's sort of really amazing experience, but it never takes me off track. It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, that's there. Fine. No
There
worries.
should be one thing I mean, I've believed this. There should be one thing every day that that challenges you, puts you in
Mm.
your discomfort zone or uncomfortable zone. And a lot of people say, well, exercise does that. It might be exercise for you. You might be hating burpees and they make you
Mhm.
uncomfortable and you go ahead and do 10 of them and you're like, okay, I did it while crying. But there should be something that, challenges you, whether it's and this was even for me. I used to do this 5 years ago when I was trying to learn how to be fluent in Spanish. I would go up it would make me so nervous, but I would go up to the Starbucks counter and they always spoke Spanish and I would say estoy aprendiendo or estoy aprendiendo español and I would order my coffee order in Spanish and I would turn beet red every time I did that, but I was practicing
Yeah,
and making sure I did it right. And they would say, like, good job, that was good. Or they would correct me. And it helped me become more and more confident in
yeah,
speaking Spanish.
that's
I was
great.
putting myself in that uncomfortable zone. And my friends were admiring it. They were like, that's so cool you're doing it. So it was nice to have that support. But sometimes I felt so stupid. I'm like, I am so nervous doing this. I'm afraid like to mess it up. But it was something that helped me, one, get better at Spanish, practice it and make sure I was doing something uncomfortable. So that was more so my experience years ago. And I feel like there is something every day that I do. But if you're somebody that's listening and you are trying to challenge yourself and step outside that comfort zone, write something every day that is maybe uncomfortable for you. Maybe you're somebody who gets anxious talking to other people and instead you decide to write down your goal of speaking to two people that day, ask them how their day was, two strangers. Like there's so many different ways you can challenge yourself and
Mm.
I truly believe that.
Yeah, we're all a beginner at some point in our life.
Yes. Yes.
So there's no
So
reason
yeah,
to, like you just didn't might not have seen when someone else was a beginner and what they were doing. And we're
yeah,
all going to support each other. Uh, I think we need to give ourselves, I had this three words in my book, grit, grace, and grounded.
yeah,
And we got to give ourselves a little bit of grace. I'm a pretty good grit guy. I've finished races with broken bones and I've pushed through hard events and, sleepless nights and all of that. Um, and it's okay to give yourself a little bit of grace, maybe laugh at
mhm,
yourself, trip and fall and you're like, oh, that was pretty silly. Call myself a dope every once in a while for fun.
yeah,
But it's all in the spirit of grace, which is, oh, as much as I'm a high performer, I know I'm not perfect. I don't even know what perfect would be defined as, but I'm always
yeah,
learning. So that means that there are some moments that the learning has to happen and you have to work through that. So, yeah, I have like some really great relationships where we'll share experiences. They're like cross-generational. A friend of mine's really good at CrossFit. He'll take me to the gym and I'm good at
yeah,
running and I'll tell him about that or business and social media. And so we can both be equals in different topics.
yeah,
And just because I've been on the planet a little bit longer doesn't make me better. Just I know something different. And so finding those relationships, leaning into that, there's very few people when we sort of have a real conversation who are going to ever stay in false pretenses because they really don't want to. It's like the age-old story that teenagers really wouldn't mind not having their phone if no one else had it, right?
yeah.
And so I think our instincts are right on, and then we have some weaknesses in the human system we can overcome with some practice. And it gets better. It just gets better and better.
I'm excited for that. So I know I've appreciate you for sharing all that you have shared with us. And so my final question is what is one piece of advice? And I know that you had said it already, but in regards to somebody struggling with an aspect of their health, like what is the first piece of advice you would give to somebody who's maybe just struggling in all aspects of their health?
Yeah. Little progress repeated. That's like so. Everyone asks me like, well, if I could change one thing tomorrow, what it would be? And I would love you to take 1 hour a day and make it for yourself. But if that's too much, make it 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's about eating, it's only about taking one meal of a week out of 21 and fixing it.
Yeah.
If it's about, listening to other people and compromising on your own interests, it's always this sort of like Just negotiate for one little bit of progress and then do it again and again and again, and then it starts to build. Now, the other thing is if you live in a system, a family system, friends, work, whatever, by having open communication about that's really important. So if you have a partner, you say, hey, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to go do my thing. You okay with that? And usually the partner will always say yes.
Yeah.
Just want to know. So like have this open dialogue and they'll be happy for you if you're taking your 15. And then one day it's an hour and then you say to the other person like, hey, I'm supporting you too. Why don't you go do your hour? And now we got this like camaraderie and this support going on and progress being made. And if you can do this little bits, like sometimes we grow impatient, but I don't know what we're rushing towards, Julia. Hopefully, we're all going to
Oh, no
be here like
way.
you for another 70 years. Like, that's a long time. So there's
Yeah.
no rush
That's
to
it. I need to
anything.
remind myself of that because sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to get my email sequence going for my business. I need to do this podcast every single Friday and things of that nature. And I put this like need in there. And sometimes I do. I say like there are times I'm like, oh, I'd love to go to the beach today, but I want to work on my business. And it's like, well, what's my decision? Do I want to go to the beach or do I want to do my business? And for me, I'm like, well, I want to do my business because I want it to grow and things of that nature. And I I'm even working on that. Like that for me, I show this is so funny. I have a self-care list that I follow weekly because I need a checklist how to take care of
That's
myself. So I'm like,
good.
so at my gym that I have that I work at, they have sauna and steam room. So I'm like, sauna steam room 2 times a week. Make sure you do yoga 2 times a week. Watch a funny movie once a week. Like these are little things that I've included
Amazing.
to help me like check in with myself and take that time for self-care. It's
That's
funny.
intentional. That's really what you're
Yes.
connecting back to your purpose. You're building this platform. That platform will be stronger and stronger over time by repeated building on top of it and not compromising on it. And
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, what you'll find is other people will want to do it the way you do, and then you'll actually create this community. We role
Hmm.
model the behavior. One of the chapters in the book is the ripple effect. People notice
Yeah.
what we do, they copy us.
Yeah.
Power of community really matters. This endless journey, and I think it's all up to us. I like to tell people, that you got your lottery ticket when you were born. You just have to decide to cash it. You don't need to buy another one. You are the
Yeah.
most powerful creature you'll ever have any control over. We might as well use all the power we have. It's why I think we can do way more than we think we can. I didn't know it, 25 years ago, and I know it only now because I have practiced it.
Yeah.
And I feel very, sort of blessed to have found the path, to have found, friends, family, and community supportive of me, and that I also respected myself so much so that I stuck to it. And here I am all these years later. It's very exciting. My book, Living Intentionally, is out on Amazon. I've
Yeah.
put as much of this in
Yeah.
there as
Again.
possible. There you go. And so that you have maybe a little bit of, an advance on my thinking that you don't
Hmm.
have to take 25 years to learn. So there's some frameworks and some actions. And look, Julie, I appreciate you and what you're doing. I hope that
Thank
your
you.
audience, wants to lean in as much as you and I both are.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to support you and come back on anytime in the future.
Yes, I definitely would love that. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak today. And to everybody listening, I will include Joe's information below so you can go ahead and follow him on social, connect with him beyond just this interview, work with him, all the above. So I hope all of our listeners have a great rest of your day and you as well, Joe, and continue to live the best life by you.
Thanks.
I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. If you would like to continue to get these episodes first thing, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel on YouTube and on Spotify under Best Life by You. If you're interested in working together, y'all can go ahead and visit bestlifebyyou.com/work with me, or go ahead and follow me on Instagram at NutriFitJulia. Send me a DM or just follow for more information, fun tips, and just a lot of humor. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Let's continue to live the best life by you.